All right, what's up, YouTube? I hope that you guys are all blessed and doing well. I'm doing Bible study on Daniel chapter 2, just kind of trying to keep my word on what I said earlier in another video that I was going to do a Bible study tonight on this chapter. So I'm going to do it now because I got to work the next few days and I know I won't be able to do it then. Nevertheless, just going to get pretty much right into it. So here we go. So this is Daniel chapter 2. We're going to start at verse 1. Now, this chapter of Daniel is really interesting. So here we go. In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. So he kept having these dreams, kind of tormenting him and waking him up. These are the notes that I wrote way back in December when I was really studying on this chapter. So I'll be looking at those for reference. Verse number 2 says, "And the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king." So notice that for his dreams to be interpreted, he went the demonic route, seeking people who use the occult, which is why we as believers, it's important to use the word of God and the leading of the Lord to give us knowledge and revelation for our dreams. Not only can you get the wrong interpretation from seeking knowledge in other ways, but you also violate God's laws when doing so. So a lot of those, websites that be like, "Oh, I'm going to interpret your dream," or even books, like if it's not a book giving reference to the word of God about interpreting dreams, then I wouldn't suggest it, because people obviously in the scripture, people went to the occult. He called on the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans, who were like these considered wise men, to interpret his dream. But the Bible tells us that interpretation is left up to God. So just take note in that. Also take note that the Chaldeans were called, as I was just saying, for this. And remember how in chapter 1, it was told to us that the king wanted to teach the children of Judah the tongue of the Chaldeans and the learning of the Chaldeans. So back in chapter 1, they told us that. So pretty much they wanted to teach Daniel and his friends how to be like these occult people. But God had other plans. So verse number 3, "And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king and in Syriac, O king, live forever," which is a language. I'm going to define that in a second. "O king, live forever. Tell thy servants thy dream, and we will show the interpretation." So Syriac is the language of the ancient Syria, a Western dialect of Aramic, which is a language in which many important early Christian texts are preserved, in which is still used by Syrian Christians as an liturgical language. Notice how the Chaldeans spoke this language to the king. But don't forget, remember I was just bringing up in chapter 1 that it was the king's goal. It was his goal to teach the kids of Judah, Daniel, all of them, Daniel and his friends, their ways, their tongues. So they wanted them to learn their language. Verse number 5, "And the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, The thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, you shall be cut into pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill." So the king was ready to like murder these people. They didn't. Oh yeah, keynote. The king forgot the dream and he wanted them to interpret it for him, even though he didn't even remember it himself. Verse number 6, "But if you show the dream and the interpretation thereof, you shall receive great gifts and rewards. Receive of me great gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and the interpretation thereof." They answered again and said, Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it. So once again, they're like, tell us what the dream was and we'll interpret it for you. And notice in verse number 6, take note in this because further on in this chapter, this is going to come up again. He's saying, you shall receive of me gifts and reward. Like he was willing to pay them for their interpretation, to pay them for whatever revelation they could give. Verse number 8, the king answered and said, I know of a certainty that you would gain the time because ye see the things is going for me. But if you will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For ye have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me. Till the time be changed, therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that ye shall show me the interpretation, that you can show me the interpretation thereof. So what's the king saying? The king's saying, like, look, I don't remember the dream that I dreamt. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell you, because you're prepared to speak like lying words before me. You're prepared to speak corrupt words before me. So there's only one decree for you. As he already said, they're going to be cut into pieces and their house is going to be like a dunghill if they don't tell him the interpretation thereof. Verse number 10, the Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is no man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore, there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such things at any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. Take note how the Chaldeans' name always appears with the magician and the astrologers. Verse number 11, and it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before thee, O king, except the gods, whose dwelling is not with the flesh. So I thought this was pretty cool right here. How they said, except the gods whose dwelling is not in the flesh. Even the Chaldeans had to admit only a God can reveal such things by stating one whose dwelling is not in the flesh. Basically, one who remains in the spirit. This gives us knowledge that dreams are spiritual. So I thought that was pretty cool. Verse number 12. For this cause the king was angry and very furious and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. Verse number 13. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. So what's important about that? Already, remember what happened in the first chapter when we were studying the first chapter? Already in the second chapter, Daniel and his friends are considered wise men. Jesus is king. What's up? I see you in the chat. So already in the second chapter of the book of Daniel, they're already considered wise men because the king he's ready to destroy these wise men, and they sought for Daniel and his friends. Verse number 14. Then Daniel answered with the counsel and wisdom to Arosh, the captain of the king's guard, which was going forth to slain the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arosh, the king's captain, excuse me, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arosh made the thing known to Daniel. So the king's guard went to go gather these wise men and was ready to kill them. And Daniel and them didn't even know what was going on. So then he made the thing known unto Daniel. Verse number 16 says, then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time and that he would show the king the interpretation. So Daniel is like, look, give me some time and I'll show the king the interpretation. Give me some time. So Daniel is ready to partake on this task. Daniel is ready to partake, saying like, look, I'm gonna, take on this task and show the king the interpretation. Verse number 17, then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Verse number 18. Then the secret was revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So God revealed the secret to Daniel in a night vision, showing us, showing us that God does speak through visions. He speaks through dreams. He reveals mysteries that way. And I thought that was, pretty interesting. I like that. Where are we? Verse number 20. Daniel answered and said, bless the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the time and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. So right here, this scripture, Daniel chapter 2, verse 22 is telling us, God, he revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. Lord. Verse number 23, I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who has given me wisdom and might, and has made known unto me now what we desired of thee. For thou hast made known unto us the king's matter. So Daniel is giving praise to God, saying, thank you. You've given us the wisdom that we desired of thee. You came through, you've given us the interpretation of this dream, and also obviously told Daniel the dream because the king didn't even remember it. So God came through on their behalf right there. And I find that amazing. Verse number 24, then Daniel went in unto Arosh, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, destroy not the wise men of Babylon, bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. What's important about this verse right here in number 24? Not only was, Daniel and his fellows, his friends, they're the ones that took the Most High God for revelation about this. They're the ones that took the Most High God for this wisdom concerning this matter of the king. But yet, Daniel requested before he went into the king, destroy not the wise men of Babylon, meaning all those other people that we read about in the prior verses who were considered the wise men, the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans. Daniel could have been real selfish and been like, yeah, well, me and my friends, we know what's up. But no, instead he was like, destroy not the wise men of Babylon, which I thought was really, respectful of him. Daniel requested that the wise men of Babylon be not destroyed. So he wasn't just trying to save himself and his friends, but others also. Thought that was pretty cool. Verse number 25, then Arosh brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and he said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. So they weren't in his kingdom at their own free will. Remember in chapter 1, God gave them over to Nebuchadnezzar. Remember he gave over Joachim and that whole nation or whatever back in chapter 1, because captives is somebody that's bound, meaning they're not there just on their free will. They were captives there. Verse number 26, the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar. Remember they changed his name to Belteshazzar. Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen and the interpretation thereof? And Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king have demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But the king, but there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon the bed are these. So Daniel is bigging up God. He's bigging up the Most High God, saying, look, there's a God in heaven that revealeth secrets and makes things known, right? And remember, Nebuchadnezzar did not remember his dream. Nebuchadnezzar did not remember what he dreamt. But not only is Daniel about to go in, tell him these dreams and visions, but he's going to give him interpretation thereof. Verse number 29. For thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what shall come to pass hereafter. And he that revealeth secrets, talking about the Most High God, maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes, that they shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. Wow. That's interesting right there. The end part, the latter part of verse 30, and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. So what was in Nebuchadnezzar's heart? We're about to find out. 31. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, that were of iron and clay, and break them into pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces altogether. Broken into pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Verse number 36. This is a dream. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Verse number 37. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven have given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. Another great thing, God had given this king that position. Verse number 38. And whosoever the children of men dwell, and wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the fields and the fowls of the heaven have he given into thy hand, and have made thee a great ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. So Daniel's given interpretation of this dream, saying the king is the head of gold. Verse number 39. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and a third kingdom of brass, what shall bear rule over all the earth. Verse number 40. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron breaketh all things, shall it break in pieces and bruise. 41. And whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot right there. Not gonna lie to y'all, that's a lot. A lot to like comprehend. This is something like you really have to sit and soak in understanding, try to get that mental image of what they're describing here. Verse number 42. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. 43. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with miry clay. Verse number 44. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Glory to God. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Come on. Verse number 45. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it break in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God have made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof is sure. Jesus is King said, what I noticed with Daniel in his work environment, he affected people around him due to the gift and relationship he had with God. A lot of it was positive. Some of it was negative pushback. Yeah, that's facts. Absolutely. I can see that too. The fact that Daniel was like, don't kill the wise men of Babylon, even though he's the one, him and his fellows are the ones that got the interpretation, that shows how like he seemed to have like this type of like compassion, and it was definitely positive in some sense. And then there's some people that didn't like him. As like we go on in other chapters, like there was a lot of people that didn't really like the fact that, you know, the presence of the Lord was with Daniel and his friends. But yeah. Verse number 46. Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshiped Daniel and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. Then the king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is that your God is the God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets, seeing that thou couldst reveal the secret. So now King Nebuchadnezzar, who is the king over Babylon, is glorifying the Most High God, glorifying the God of Israel that Daniel and his fellows serve. Like he's glorifying them, saying like, look, the God that you serve, he's a God of gods, a Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets. So that's pretty cool. But yet in further chapters, we'll see that, you know, Nebuchadnezzar still was doing what he wanted to do. 48. Then the king made Daniel a great man and gave him many great gifts and made him a ruler over the whole province of Babylon and the chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. So now Daniel has been uplifted to a higher position. I love that. I love that, like, just the favor of the Lord is on Daniel. Now he's been moved up to a higher position because of, you know, God giving him this understanding and this wisdom when Daniel and them sook him for it. I love that. Verse number 49, then Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat at the gate of the king. So Daniel was like, look, I can't forget my friends. I can't forget my homies. Daniel requested of the king that, you know, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get a good position too. And so back to what Jesus' king had said, he definitely, like, his work environment, like you said, what does it say? In his work environment, he affected people around him due to the gift and relationship he had with God. Like, that's 100% facts. Because Daniel was even still thinking about his friends after that, like requesting of the king that they get a good position too. But yeah, I'm gonna go on to chapter 3. I know it's super late, so I don't expect people to stick around, but I'm just gonna do it now. So Daniel chapter 3. Let me see if I can make it bigger. No, it's too big. All right, hold on. Come on and get smaller. This crazy thing. There we go. Pull my content up. All right. Chapter 3, verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits. So over here, 60 means 60 cubits, ancient measurement, which is about 18 inches. So, okay. The king made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image, which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the princes, the governors, and captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Verse number 4. Then a herald cried aloud, to you it is a commanded. Can I talk? Lord, can I talk today? Jesus, help me. Then a herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the golden image. You fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. So take note in this verse. In Babylon, can I make it smaller? I got to see my whole thing. There we go. Take note in this verse. In Babylon, at this time, an image was being worshipped at the sound of any kind of music. Interesting that nowadays musicians are praised and glorified, and people sing their songs when the beat drops. A sign of worship, regardless of what the message promotes. So, music in the sense of like worldly music and stuff like that, music of the world, people are glorifying this and worshiping it regardless of what message, they might be promoting. So I thought that was interesting that even in the Bible days, they were talking about music and worship. Verse number 6, and whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Oh, strange that the punishment for not partaking was to be burned alive, and that the punishment for not believing and serving Christ results in being tormented in the lake of fire. And fear not them which kill the body, but are able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both the soul and the body in hell. Mind you, I wrote this way back in December, so bear with me. Nevertheless, verse number 7. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Wherefore, at the time, certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. So remember the Jews, which is Daniel and his friends, Judah and them that's held captive up in Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom and stuff. Now these Chaldeans, they're coming and accusing the Jews. And remember what in the book of Esther, that one guy was accusing the Jews also, like he subjected to kill Mordecai because Mordecai wasn't worshiping him, and Mordecai had took it upon himself to, serve his God and his God alone. Whole nother situation. But anyway, verse number 9. They spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, pastry, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he shall be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Verse number 12. So now these Chaldeans have went back and they're snitching. They went back and telling on Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the providence of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? This is when it gets good. This is when I start getting really excited. This is when I'm about to start screaming. Jesus the King said Satan was trying his hardest to wipe the Jews in the OT. Not gonna lie. Yep, he was. In the Old Testament, he definitely was. Number 15. Now, if ye be ready, that at the time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image that I have made. Well, but if you worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Okay. I'm very excited. Clearly, Nebuchadnezzar didn't believe in the God of Israel. And even though we just read in chapter 2 that he was glorifying the God of Israel when Daniel gave him interpretation and understanding about his dream, but now in chapter 3, he's like, who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? So clearly Nebuchadnezzar didn't believe in the God of Israel and somehow believed no God was able to get Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego out of that situation. That's what he thought. Jesus' king said they were constantly attacked through various means, accusations, wars, witchcraft, and sin from within the camp. That's facts. Definitely true. All right, we're going on. Jesus' king, what's your name? I'm just curious. All right, number 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. Come on. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. So this is important right here. They told the king plainly that they will not worship the image that Nebuchadnezzar has set up, and that their God was able to deliver them. And even if he didn't, they're still not worshiping the image. Lord, I love that. I love it so much. I love it so much right now, because Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are like, look, we're not worshiping that image. And if we have to go in this furnace, cool, our God will save us. And even if he don't, and we have to die for it and die a brutal death of burning alive, we're about that life and it's fine with us. So I found that amazing. Even I don't know why I keep thinking about the book of Esther, when like they proposed that fast, and she was like, I'm going to go in before the king. And she was like, if I perish, I perish. Sometimes it gets that deep and that real that it's like, look, I got to do what you told me to do. I got to work this thing out. But anyway, it's a Muslim name, Abdul Razak. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but okay. All right. Where are we at? Verse number 19. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was charged against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. So heat that thing up even more. Verse number 20. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. So this part here, like, tie them up, bind them and throw them into the furnace. So not only are you going to heat this furnace up 7 times hotter, but you're also going to tie them up, like you're pretty much trying to destine that they burn up in there. And that's crazy to me. Verse number 21. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Wow. Threw them in there with their clothes on. And Jesus is king said, yep, it's right. Cool. All right, verse number 22. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flames of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Oh gosh, I love this. So I was talking about this earlier in the video that I made, but people who come across it on the playback or whatever, you can see the scriptures on the screen. Literally, the king, since it was so urgent, right? And these men had to go throw these guys in the furnace. The flames slew the men that took them up there. It killed the other people that were taking Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to this furnace. Jesus. Verse number 23. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound. They fell down, tied up into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished and rose up in haste and spake and said unto his counselors, did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, true, O king. He answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Jesus, I love you, Lord. Number 26. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire. Jesus. They were bound in that fire, tied up, thrown in there. And now they're walking out the fire. They walked right out of the midst of the fire. Come on. Sorry, I get excited. Verse number 27. And the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor a hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. That's amazing. Verse number 28. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him. So now Nebuchadnezzar is glorifying the God of Israel, the Most High God, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's God. He's glorifying them, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any god except for theirs. Look at this right here. This is sticking out to me. And have changed the king's word. That was a decree that the king had made. Remember, we just read up in further verses, like the king had put that in motion. That was the king's word. And the fact that God came through and saved Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he had to go back and change his word. That's the God that I serve, Jesus. Verse number 29, therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut into pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Jesus, I love you, Lord. This is amazing. So you're telling me the king sent out a decree. Now he has to change his word. Now he's making a different decree. Now the decree is that every people, nation, and language, you better not speak anything against the Most High God. You better not speak anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or you're going to be cut into pieces and your house shall be made a dunghill. Wow. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So now, not only did God come through and save them, they got put in the furnace, they came out, they're not burnt, they're good. And because of God, the king changes his own decree, changes his own words. Now they're being promoted. They're being promoted. Found that amazing. But yeah, it's getting a little bit too late. So I don't know if I'm going to do a prayer tonight, but if I am, I need to go get into some worship. But nevertheless, I hope that you guys were edified. Thank you, Jesus is King, for speaking up in the chat. And until next time, I'm Car Janelle. Oh, yeah. Bye.